Greetings, everyone, and welcome to today's webinar on the Arkansas Aerial Imagery Project. My name is Chad, and I'll be your host today. We're joined by several members of our executive committee as panelists today. If at any time during today's broadcast you have a question, please feel free to enter that into the Q&A option at the bottom of your Zoom control screen. You also have the chat function as well as the raise your hand option if you would like to join the conversation. Today's agenda looks like this. We'll have a welcome and introduction from our chair, Dino Trawick, followed by a statewide imagery program update and coordination from Shelby Johnson, and then our presentation today from Sanborn on 6-inch and oblique imagery options, specifications, details, and commitment deadlines by Jason Caldwell and Sean Beanham, followed by, at the end, a Q&A. So at this time, I'll turn things over to Dino for his welcome and introduction.
Thank you, Chad. I appreciate that. I'd like to welcome everyone to today's webinar. Back in 1990, the Arkansas GIS Users Forum was created with the intent to share information and to collaborate with others in order to make data available and useful for everybody. So today we're still doing that. And today is a perfect opportunity where we have an opportunity to disseminate this information with partnership with Sanborn and the Arkansas GIS Office, and to bring that to everyone's attention. So without further ado, I'd like to welcome Shelby and let him discuss what is going to be happening today. Thank you, Shelby.
I'd like to thank the GIS User Forum for putting this webinar together on really short notice and extending the invitation out to the stakeholders and community across the state. Arkansas has a fairly long history with digital ortho imagery. The earliest vintages of ortho imagery were collected by the U.S. Geological Survey beginning in the mid-90s. In about 2000, the State GIS Board drove a stake in the ground and said, this is a really important framework data set that our state needs at local government, state government, and federal government level, as well as the private sector. And so beginning in 2001, the state began to collect digital ortho imagery covering the whole state. The state repeated that process again in 2006. Then again in 2010, and then again in 2017. Each time, as the state has been able to complete an updated imagery data set, we've always been able to leverage and take advantage of trends in the industry, improvements in techniques, technologies, and efficiencies. And so the product has generally been better each time. You know, it's really crazy to me when I look at the stats for the 2017 imagery program. That imagery, we warehouse and publish that as an image service. And I walked across the hall a little while ago to talk with Matt DeLong in our office. Matt is able to pull the use statistics for that imagery. And from January 1st of 2022 up until about an hour ago, that image service had rendered 76,350,000 and change views on data that was collected in 2017. So that's just stats for just this year, which gives you an idea of how wildly popular this particular part of our GIS framework in the state is. Beginning back in last fall, we had coordinated with the administration, and we were very blessed to receive an authorization and funding from Governor Hutchinson. Governor Hutchinson also funded the 2017 project. And in this cycle, he provided $1.2 million in funding, in discretionary funding to the GIS office so that we could begin another update. We coordinated with our contractor, Sanborn Map Company. You'll be hearing from them in a little bit. And worked with the GIS Board. We've held a series of 2 different meetings under the leadership of Sharon Hawkins and the other board members to work through the strategies and the program and what kind of updates we might be able to obtain in this cycle. Really excited to let all of the participants in this webinar know today that in this cycle, we'll once again be covering the entire state. This statewide project will begin this coming winter of 2023. And new for this program, new for this time around, we'll be moving from a 1-foot resolution imagery package to a 9-inch statewide coverage, leaf off, and 4-band. One of the things that the board had the wisdom to do back when it authored the original contract back in 2016, 2017 timeframe was to include for our stakeholders an option to buy up for additional products. We've maintained that buy up option, and it has some specifications within it. And so we have here today both Jason Caldwell and Sean Benham from Sanborn, and they're going to share with you additional details about potential buy-up products that would be available through that contract. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to those guys who can answer all of the questions about the details.
All right, thank you, Shelby. We appreciate it. So again, as Shelby said, my name is Sean Benham. I'm the VP of Programs here for Sanborn. So in that role, I manage our project management office as well as many of our statewide and federal mapping programs here, including being the project manager with Shelby and his team on the 2017 mapping project that Shelby had mentioned. So we're very excited to be back here and to have a new program moving forward. And as Shelby said, looking to really build on and improve upon both the data and the overall project for the state and for you as stakeholders. With me, we have Jason Caldwell, our VP of Business Development. Obviously, Jason and Shelby work closely together on all of the things we're going to talk about here moving forward, both in terms of our base product and potential buy-ups and options moving forward in the program. So by way of a quick agenda here, we will talk a little bit about the base program. We thought it'd be valuable for folks who may not be overly familiar with the 2017 work or just the imagery program in general on a high level approach and design and talk about some of the base deliverables, but then really shift focus, as Shelby mentioned, to potential buy-up options coming through the contract available to you, whether it's increased resolution ortho imagery, 6-inch or 3-inch, oblique imagery. So this would be a 5-view oblique product, which we'll go into a little bit of detail on, and then LiDAR and then some others as well. I believe, questions as we go along, if you have them, please put them in the chat, and we'll have plenty of time here for Q&A, I believe, at the end. Just a really brief look at who Sanborn is. Sanborn was founded in 1866. We're the oldest mapping company in the U.S. Some of you may be familiar with our fire insurance maps that are now historical documents in the Library of Congress and still out there really being utilized today in a historical sense. But obviously since then, we're now in the digital age. And as we've moved into the 21st century here, obviously looking at digital sensors, oblique imagery, drone-based imagery, at LiDAR services, et cetera. So we are a full service geospatial provider, really own assets all up and down the service chain here and product chain. But what we're focused here on today is data acquisition. So again, we're an industry leader in terms of acquisition resources, owning multiple single and twin engine aircraft, and a multitude of sensors to put in those aircraft and to acquire data for clients like the state of Arkansas. So that includes our Ultracam Eagle systems, our Ultracam Osprey oblique systems, Leica and Regal LiDAR systems, mobile mapping systems, and then behind all of that is a huge amount of IT infrastructure that's really growing day over day as resolution increases. Like in your program, data sizes increase, and that is happening across the industry and across all products. So obviously our IT infrastructure needs to follow and continues to grow. So just a brief description of the base ortho imagery. So as Shelby mentioned, this year the approach will be for a 9-inch resolution base statewide. That's an increased resolution from the prior collection at 12-inch. Note here, and I was actually looking at this a little bit this morning, this is a slide number taken from last year. The state's square mileage, I believe, is just under 54,000 square miles. We do have a bit of a buffer around the delivery extents that up that delivery a bit, but again, this is a statewide coverage, multispectral imagery. So that question has come up. We are collecting in 4 bands, the RGB plus the near IR band, which are delivered in GeoTIFF format files from a consistent UTM standpoint across the state. The final product will also have a Mr. SID mosaic per county and city. So that's a compressed format file, again, reducing that file size down, given how large these GeoTIFF files can be, and allowing for a bit of a reduced file size and easier storage and display on that data. And then compliant metadata, FGDC compliant metadata to go with the data. This is just a real quick look at how we designed this in 2017. We do expect to finalize a similar design here in the coming weeks. Really the approach here is to block out both our collection and our delivery. This maximizes our efficiency on the collection in a couple of ways. One is we were able and we will be able to collect in blocks where we may have variable weather across the state. So, a front is coming through, let's say, and we have clouds lingering in the east one morning, but it's clearing out in the west, right? We're able to tackle the blocks where weather is available. It also allows us to follow ground conditions, right? As Shelby mentioned, this will be leaf off collection. So as the season progresses, leaf on may progress sooner in the south than it does in the north, working south to north. So this allows us to prioritize blocks earlier on in terms of south to north collection. And then we're optimizing our flight line lengths based on our aircraft and sensors. So again, this is a kind of a proven approach for us. It's how we design the 2017 flights and how we anticipate designing the new flights as well. I mentioned a couple of the criteria there. It's not listed here, but I think it's worth mentioning. Leaf off is a primary criteria for this collection. Sunny skies, right? We can't have clouds either between the sensor and the ground, or clouds that will obscure the sunlight to the point that it affects the imagery. So we need a sunny day. And we also need 30 degrees or greater of sun angle. So that time frame in the early or in the wintertime can be somewhat limited, right? Somewhere around 10 a.m. to 2 p.m. and it expands every day after December 21st. So, for all those things to come together, we're not flying every day. Certainly, we have down days for weather. We were fairly fortunate, I would say, Shelby, in the 2017 collect. We had a very nice stretch of weather, but we also had quite a bit in the way of multiple planes and assets here to take advantage of that. And that's the expectation moving forward into this year's collect. So this just goes to show you kind of the flight lines and how we collected. So this is just a little subset of this area. This darker area is actually a 6-inch resolution buy-up. So you can see the tighter flight lines here versus what the 12-inch collect was designed at. But if you envision this expanded, each of these lines are all individual photos. So In about a 5-week span, we collected a little over 38,000 photos, which is a pretty impressive feat, as Shelby mentioned, just number-wise. It's a lot of work, and we're excited to get back on it here this year. This is just a real quick overview of the technical approach, going from collection of that imagery through the production process, utilizing ground control to orient the data, reviewing and processing the raw data, aerial triangulation, which essentially stitches all these photos together and adds that 2-pixel accuracy component, making it map accurate data, utilizing an existing or updating a DEM to correct for ground and elevation, and then the orthorectification, essentially seaming and stitching all of that data together, color balancing all of those 38,000 photos together so that we have a seamless, homogeneous data set for you at the end of the day. So now we'll kind of just quickly jump to after collection. I know Shelby's going to give us good weather again next year, so we'll have all the data collected. Within 14 days of an individual mission's acquisition, we will be able to have the data up on our online GeoServe platform. Essentially, this is a quick view, a quick look at the capture. This is an off the camera, so to speak. So this is not color balanced, this is not stitched and seamed, but it gives us a very early look at what we've captured, and helps us answer some questions, in particular, either very early in the window where we might maybe have some lingering snow, or very late in the window where we might have some leaf condition concerns, to get a look at the imagery and make some determinations of quality and completeness of the data. So you can see here the initial differences of the data between missions, right? So slightly different lighting conditions, maybe day to day, or you can see the individual flight lines even as the plane is mosaic or lawn mowing back and forth here. But again, very early, roughly oriented look at that data. At the end of the day, our product will be homogeneous, it will be seamless, and it will be color balanced across the state. So, if you can picture kind of that slide I sent before, or I showed before, of 38,000 individual photos flown over potentially 5 weeks difference in ground conditions and atmospheric conditions. We go through a process to essentially balance all of those together and deliver a seamless product across the state. That includes bridges corrected, again, seam lines feathered and reduced so that we're not seeing individual photo edges coming together. Buildings intact, not split between photos or seam lines, and again, a seamless color balance across the project. So let's talk about upgrades. So that's our base product, 9-inch statewide. Resolution upgrades, very typical and common upgrade here in a statewide program. This can be done at 6-inch or 3-inch resolution. Again, this would be a 4-band RGB near IR deliverable. But again, it is a separate flight plan and a separate control and DEM. And this is a separate set of acquisition. We would fly it typically lower. So this would be about a third of the overall height difference lower for our aircraft, and with a different flight design and production design. So, but beyond that, the product itself is, in terms of deliverables, very similar, with the exception of increased accuracy and increased resolution. So this does require, as we'll kind of talk about timing, this does require us to, again, design a separate flight plan and have assets available to collect at the time of imagery capture for this product. So this is something that would need to be identified prior to flight if this increased resolution option were something you were interested in. Sorry, there we go. derivative products. So from this imagery, we do have the ability to extract from a photogrammetric perspective or even from a heads-up perspective, additional features, buildings. I think land cover was mentioned, right? Land use, land cover, very common near IR application from the imagery. 3D modeling, in particular from obliques, which we'll talk about here in a minute. Typically, for most products, this would not require changes to our flight plan. Jason, you can noodle that and chime in if you think there's differences there. But this would be typically something that post-acquisition or even post-ortho production could be derived after the fact.
Yeah, I would agree, Sean. I mean, the discussion in terms of feature extraction for impervious or other types of work that need to be done could be added on after the ortho's already been created if needed. There's certain things, 3D modeling, that one might be a little tougher to do. Anything that's going to have an elevation component to it, likely it'd be good to know that ahead of time so that we can plan accordingly.
Yeah, optimize the flight plan accordingly. So,
right.
But again, in terms of derivative products from the stereo imagery, quite a bit in the way of options. Planimetric mapping, right? Very typical. Additional upgrade as well from stereo. So all of that available here for further discussion. And then oblique imagery. So I mentioned this, I think, at the start. This is a separate sensor and a completely separate flight from the imagery that we will be capturing as part of the base program. Very different sensor here in that we are capturing essentially 5 views for every individual photo. So we're capturing this nadir photo, same as we are for use in the ortho program. We're also capturing 4 oblique views at 45 degrees in each cardinal direction. North, south, east, and west. So this is, again, available at really a multitude of resolutions depending on your requirements and need. Really, it's a function of flying height and then the amount of flying that's needed for a given resolution. This is a licensed product. However, the licensing is, we feel, very much open in that there are no restrictions on usage, sharing, or deployment in terms of number of seats or who the data is distributed to. There's no per seat cost. Your right to the data never expires, so it is essentially yours to own. Jason, I would say the only restriction in terms of the licensing is that we ask that it not be resold and that Sanborn retains ownership of the data itself. Is that correct?
Right, that's correct. Yeah. So there's no, it's as many users that want to use it can use it. There's no additional cost for that. And you can provide it to any other government entity or anybody else that needs access to viewing the data without any additional cost. So pretty wide open, basically lets you use it however you want to use it. But there is a secondary market that we sell into. So we ask our clients not to sell into that market.
So this data, once captured and processed, can be viewed in Sanborn's Oblique Analyst online viewer, web-based application, and the data can be hosted at the client site, so we can deliver you all of the imagery and the information to set up the SOA on site, or Sanborn can host the imagery and serve the data through our servers out to the URL as well. This is just a very high-level look at the SOA. Again, you see our preview of the various views here of a given building from above, from the north, from the east. Very simple and fairly intuitive application. I've even figured out how to use it fairly well, so that's saying something. And again, has quite a bit in the way of typical viewer and GIS capabilities in terms of measuring heights, lengths, areas, slopes of roofs, and search capabilities. So we have the ability to bring in, say, a parcel layer and query and search by parcel ID or by address, through various vectors that might be included here. course, editing, drawing, creating PDFs. So, very, very intuitive, but very powerful application here to utilize and to access all of these views. As you might imagine, 5 photos instead of 1 photo for every spot we're capturing increases the data volume by about 5 times, right? So these obliques can be data hogs, but the software itself accesses them and displays them fairly seamlessly. And then LiDAR. This is, again, another capability within Sanborn. We own both Regal and Leica LiDAR systems, and again, are doing a fairly large amount of work across the country in terms of both at the federal level and through states and local jurisdictions in collecting and updating LiDAR data. I think most of you are familiar with the quality level 2 data from, as USGS defines their base spec, at 2 points per square meter. Certainly seeing a change and a push for updates to the QL1 level at 8 points per square meter as hydrography work and just additional applications of this LiDAR data are becoming more and more common. Again, can be really custom designed here in terms of quality level and approach and deliverables, but typically we are collecting and delivering data fully compliant to the USGS current base specification. So in terms of our pricing and timelines here, so this table summarizes our current set of pricing for most of the options that I've just discussed. I do not believe, Jason, LiDAR is included here in the table. Again, if there's interest there.
It's right there, but it's more for a statewide if there needed to be small ones. It's
right. So that, yeah, I think that gives you an idea at a very large statewide level. Obviously, at a local level, that pricing would change a bit. But again, if there is interest, I guess the message here is through Shelby and his team, Sanborn is here to support in helping you understand, how a particular area of interest might be designed and priced and able to be included as a buy-up here through the program upcoming. With that, as I said, the calendar marches along and we will have the need to have planes in the air collecting data before we know it. So with that, we do ask, and Shelby, you can expand on this as needed. We do ask for a December 1st deadline for buy-up requests. I guess I'll note that does not necessarily, from Sanborn's perspective, require a contractual, a final contractual obligation in terms of all of the paperwork and things that sometimes lag, but in terms of a commitment of funds and the project, really for our purposes to design and assign assets and resources to ensure we can collect that data. A December 1st deadline is requested for any of those buy-ups to be defined. I think that's all I had here. Shelby, I'll kick it back to you, and I guess we can cover any questions folks might have.
Thanks, Sean. I think probably the best thing to do, maybe short term here, is to leave that particular slide up, and then sure. If you need to refer folks back to any of the other slides, you could. But at this point, I think just the best thing to do would be open it up for questions from our participants.
Absolutely. Thanks, Shelby. Thank you, Sean and Jason. That was absolutely outstanding information. So to Shelby's point, if anyone has a question, you've got a few options is to pose that question. You can use the Q&A function. If you'd like to join the conversation, you can click that raise your hand option and we can actually bring you into the conversation to pose your question to whomever it may be for. So we have just a few minutes here available if there are any questions.
Hey, Chad, this is Brian. May I ask a question?
Absolutely.
I raised my hand, but I'm having trouble with Q&A.
Thank you, Brian.
Sean, thanks again. Appreciate it. And I had a question about the oblique imagery. So to clarify, that's not included for everyone in the state. It's a buy-up option. And that Sanborn will host the oblique imagery for the end users. But I wasn't clear on how long you would host that and if that is indeed free for anyone who buys up the oblique imagery.
Yeah, good questions. Thanks. So, so I guess to answer your first question, correct. The oblique imagery is a separate buy-up option. It is not included nor scoped in the statewide collection. And as I mentioned, it is a separate. It's separate in every way, right? It's a separate aircraft. It's a separate sensor. It's a separate flight design and plan. So it is decoupled from the base imagery in that way. In terms of hosting, we do offer both options. Again, the data can be hosted by the client. We can deliver the imagery and all of the necessary setup tools to host that data from your local servers. We do offer the option for Sanborn to host that data. That does come with a fee. Jason, I'll turn it to you. I believe it's a monthly fee, correct?
That's correct.
So again, just from an infrastructure standpoint, we understand maybe a jurisdiction may not have just the IT bandwidth to maintain that and serve that. So it's an option we offer, but it is at cost. Yes.
Yeah, that's fair, right? That makes sense because that's a load of imagery to move around from machine to machine in small counties. It's going to be a burden.
Yeah, and I will note, although, so let's say a county started with that option for Sanborn to host and we host for a period of time and eventually the county says, well, now we'd like to take that in-house and move all that data to our servers. We feel we're ready to do that. And that's certainly no issue there, right? Essentially, we could transfer that data, the SOA could be set up in-house. It is essentially your data to do with as you please. So really no options to sort of start one way and go the other.
Good deal. Thank you. Thanks a lot. Thank you both.
All right. So we've had a few questions posted in the Q&A. Jason has actually answered a couple of them. I want to just read those just for everyone's knowledge. One of them was, can the ortho imagery also be hosted on your site? The answer was yes, we can host the buy-up imagery. There is a cost associated with hosting, and a follow-up to that, does that include the public web maps? Yes, public access of the OBI imagery data. A couple more questions, one from Tom. Will uncompressed data be available for download? If not, other compression types available, I think means other than Mr. Sid.
I think I can answer Tom's question. From the state perspective for the statewide project, we would also have a copy of the uncompressed data, and we could work with our partners to make that available. Our big goal is to make the whole state available, and so obviously it's easier to do that via the Mr. Sid. But if we need to make it available for the raw files, we can make arrangements for that.
Okay, looks like a question from Greg. So if we buy up, we still don't own the data, correct? It looks like, Jason, you're answering that.
Yeah, I was trying to type it in there. I'm not the best at spelling, so I'm a little sensitive in terms of returning some of these answers. But Greg, just to answer that question specifically, the buy-up imagery, if it's the ortho imagery, if it's planimetrics, if it's anything except for the oblique imagery, you would own it as the buyer of the data. The oblique imagery is a licensed product. We don't restrict you in terms of who you want to give access to it. We don't restrict you in terms of how many users can use it, but Sanborn retains the right to be able to resell that to a secondary market.
So it looks like another follow-on question from Diane. Is the buy-up for the oblique in addition to the buy-up for the 6-inch ortho imagery?
So the oblique imagery can also include what's called a quick ortho. The pricing that you're seeing on the screen now includes the quick ortho. That's not to the same specification that would be usually delivered for an ortho product. There's a slight upcharge to be able to produce that ortho at what's called a precision ortho product, which you're not seeing the pricing here for. So you wouldn't need to buy both the 3-inch or the 6-inch pricing as well as the 3-inch or 6-inch oblique. The pricing would be much less than adding both of those together. If you need pricing for the precision ortho, we can put that together relatively quickly and get that back out to the team here. So,
but I think in summary of that, Jason, that the ability to generate 6-inch ortho imagery, whether it be quick ortho or precision ortho, is available from the oblique collect, from the nadir view of the oblique. So if 6-inch orthos is a requirement or a need, it could be and can be generated from that same oblique flight.
Okay. Looks like a subsequent question also from Tom again. Do your terms and conditions prohibit the application of third-party software and or AI, ML, DL tools?
Yeah, there's no restriction in terms of that.
Awesome. Looks like a comment here from Tracy, not a question, but she says, sincerely, thank you to the forum for the quick presentation and the GIS Board, AGIO, and Shelby for years of providing great data to our state. Excited to see another imagery project. So thank you, Tracy. All right.
I think there's a request there from a student. If there's a way to pass on either my contact information or Sean's contact information to her, we can get her in touch with one of our remote sensing scientists.
Yeah, yep, we will absolutely do that.
Yeah.
All right. Well, if there's no more questions, I'll close things out for us here. We've got just a couple of more things to share with everyone. All right, so coming up next on the agenda for the Arkansas GIS User Forum, we made this announcement at our last webinar. We've got just a few days left, I think actually this Friday, before registration closes out to our next event, which is actually a class, an Introduction to ArcGIS Pro training, October 24th and 25th. For more information on that, please visit class.argisusers.org for more information. Today's webinar, as well as all of our others, are on our Arkansas GIS Users Forum YouTube page. We encourage you, if you haven't already, to please visit and follow us on there. The shortcut we've created for you is argisusers.org/YouTube. So with that, I would once again like to thank both all of our presenters today, as well as Shelby and Dino for all of their content. If there are any more questions, I'll give it just a moment here.
Chad, thank you for leading this effort. Thanks again to the forum. And thanks again to the GIS Board for the leadership and putting this program together. We're excited to deliver another statewide project and look forward to coordinating with any of the entities that are out there in terms of buy-up. I thought I might just take a second to ask Jason, if you could share your phone number for anyone who's interested in making contact with you to find out more about buy-up program and the best way to get in touch with you and Sean.
That sounds good. Sorry, we probably should have had that on the slide. But regardless, I did include it for Delaney's question there, if you can see it, but it's jcaldwell@sanborn.com. That's jcaldwell@sanborn.com. And then my desk line is 719-264-5547. And Shelby, when we get those, we'll obviously coordinate with you, and I'll be coordinating with Sean on those as well. So.
Yeah. And forum members, if anyone needs that contact information, you can also get it through us. We'll be glad to get that to you. You can call our main line at 501 682-2767, or you can email me directly at shelby.johnson@arkansas.gov.
All right. With that, we will close thing out. Thank everyone for attending today, and we hope you have a great rest of the day.
Thank you all.
Thanks.
Thank you all. Have a good
Thanks
day.
again. Have a good day.
Thank you.